Hey everyone, Galen Nuttall here from the Squirrel Journey Reloaded. So today, if anyone anyone who knows me, who has spent any amount of time with me over the last couple years, knows that a couple years ago I got really interested in the hero's journey, and I am now using the concepts from the hero's journey to apply to life, the life of the individual, and helping people achieve bigger things in their lives by turning their own lives into a journey or into a quest. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that today. So for anyone who doesn't know, the hero's journey is, so there's a guy named Joseph Campbell a couple years ago, a number of decades ago, studied stories across time, stories across culture, and look at all them tabs, goodness gracious, mo tabs, mo money. Anyways, so studied cultures, and he came up with the idea of the monomyth, which was that for some reason, even if you went way back in time, and if you even went to remote parts of the world, people had the stories followed a similar structure, very similar structure, like uncanny how societies that were completely isolated from each other could have come up with stories that were so similar over time. And at the end of the day, the thing that I love about it is it speaks to the common and collective unconscious of how our brains work. And my belief, so the other day, okay, I'll talk about the journey, and I'll talk about the other day what happened to me, which was pretty cool. But especially the Star Wars movies follow this. George Lucas was a student of Joseph Campbell's, and so he met with him and figured out how to make the Star Wars, especially the original trilogy, the first movie, classic, iconic hero's journey. The idea behind the hero's journey, what I'm going to talk about today is, and I'm going to talk about how it applies to the life of the entrepreneur. So in very broad strokes, the way that the hero's journey works is the hero starts off at home. And you know what? I'm going to give up on that circle, and I'm just going to use this fancy stuff and make a circle. Boom. The hero's journey starts off with the hero being at home and everything's relatively okay, and then something compels the hero and the hero doesn't usually know they're a hero in the beginning. So Luke Skywalker, I'm going to use the example of the original trilogy. My daughter's been watching it during the physical distancing, whatever we're going through right now. And so in the case of Star Wars, it's Luke. Luke's at home, not the super happiest kid in the world, but he's at home and everything's okay. And then something happens where he's compelled to leave. He gets the message, you're Obi-Wan, you're our only hope. He meets Obi-Wan. He has to leave Tatooine. He has to go. There's an event. His family is killed, and he has to leave. He has to leave the comfort of his home, and he has to go out. Now, I'm not going to go into all the details, but basically the idea is that as you go through this journey, as the hero goes through the journey, they're given different items along the way, the lightsaber that Luke is given along the way, things like that, and the mentorship that they're given along the way to overcome obstacles, and they face lots of obstacles. And these obstacles come in the form of heroes' journeys. They come in the forms of dragons, and the forms of bad guys and Darth Vaders, and things like that. And what at the end of the day, they're manifestations of what I certainly, and we as people, deal with. Things like imposter syndrome, things like fear of failure, things like fear of success, which I'm going to interview an interesting author on soon about this. If you haven't heard of fear of success or can't identify with it, it's fascinating. And then the big granddaddy of them all, which is resistance, which encompasses all these things. So when someone sets out, and I believe that entrepreneurship is very much a creative journey, when the entrepreneur sets out to do something creative, they come across resistance, and a lot of it's internal. Some of it's external, but a lot of it is internal. Of, am I good enough? Can I pull this off? Is this going to work? Is it not going to work? Am I going to fail? And my core belief is that the better we understand the hero's journey, the easier it is for us to see how it applies in our lives. And the other day, I'm reading a book called The War of Art by Stephen Pressfield. Phenomenal book. I highly recommend it. And it's about overcoming inner resistance. And the other day, he talks about the muse and how the muse speaks to us, and it's like this voice that comes to our head of, you should do this thing or create this thing. And sometimes I follow through with it, sometimes I don't. More often than times I don't. I get an idea and I don't see it to fruition. And what I believe is that certainly in my life, a lot of times I have not gone past this stage of leaving home. And so a big part of the squirrel journey is the preparation to cross that threshold into the new world of I'm determined to see my next big goal to completion, and I'm going to do the preparation I need before I leave home, and I'm going to cross over. And preparation, a lot of times it looks like, what I'll say is something that passes for preparation that may not actually be preparation is watching videos, reading books, talking about doing something, thinking about doing something, getting wrapped up in the mystery of doing something, but not actually sitting down and doing the work, and not actually sitting down in front of the blank page, in front of the audience, in front of whatever it is, and actually just cranking out the work. I struggle with this every day. Blank page syndrome was very difficult for me. Once I get rolling, it's a ton of fun, but when I get started, it's very difficult. And I have a lot of hacks that I'm going to go over the next few weeks to talk about what to do. And so the hero's journey is the hero leaves their place of comfort. They overcome all these trials and tribulations, and then they do return home at the end, or some semblance of home, but transformed. They're not the same person they used to be. Luke goes out. He learns how to use the Force. He comes back, to home, so to speak, but he's transformed. And my core belief is that our whole life is a journey where we are up to big things and overcoming things, and each 91-day chunk of that, which is what I talk about in the Squirrel Journal, is a journey, and each day of that 91 chunk is a journey. And I believe that a lot of times we don't cross out of the comfort of home to go through and come through and be transformed and to go on our next journey. So the other day, the muse spoke to me, and I woke up and I could clearly hear these words so clearly that I knew that I wasn't going to be able to fall asleep again until I wrote them down. And so I wrote them down, and I'm actually just going to, let's see if I can find them, and I can just bring them over here. Oh, there they are. Cool. What I found, what was spoken to me was this. And it's like clear as day in my head. I had to write it down, email it to myself, or else I wasn't going to be able to get back to sleep. I believe the code to unlocking a life of purpose and meaning is hidden within the stories told across generations, across time and space, all over the world. The ultimate purpose of the journey is to know thyself and tap into your hidden power and unleash it. The reason you haven't fulfilled your journey, you haven't hit that big goal, is because you haven't been given the tools necessary. These tools aren't given to you in school. I never learned these in school. I learned them on my own. So that's what the Squirrel Journey is all about. Empowering people to have those tools to overcome those obstacles, overcome those barriers that are fairly universal. I mean, every creative person that I know that will admit to it will admit to having these struggles. A lot of famous people. Maya Angelou very famously talks about how she has, she's at the time she said it, she said, I've published 11 books, and I still feel like one day people are going to say this, she's a fraud. So things like that. Anyways, thanks for joining me. That's all about the hero's journey and the entrepreneur's journey and the squirrel's journey. All right, take care.